Gate, this is episode 168. We are talking Stargate SG-1. Well, not even the full Get Into Gate team is here. It's 50%. We're on with Mitch and Matty. How you doing, big fella?
Hey.
Much like it was last week, we're running at half strength here. In this time of COVID and this time of isolation, I'm currently in my spare room. I know you're in your glorious... What do you call that thing? Is it a geek room?
Yeah, it's just a geek room.
God, I mean, it's beautiful. If only you could see it, dear listeners. Full of wonderful cabinets, full of memorabilia.
You said something to me before we turned the microphones on that I feel like you need to share with everybody who's listening right now. Just knowing how tough we are all doing it, not being able to see each other. What are you doing right now as you're recording? Where are you situated?
Well, as I have been in the last several isolation recorded podcasts, we've been in our respective houses. I've been in it is a spare room. It's kind of like it's a mini lounge room, a theaterette I like to call it, because it's where I come in to watch movies, but it's a theaterette. I put the "et" on there because it's so tiny. Couch. I'm in front of like a bunch of stacked shelves full of movies and DVDs and books and all that sort of stuff. We've recently had the house painted. A lot of that stuff is out in the shed. All that remains is a couch. That couch is still full of stuff that was in the room but hasn't been put anywhere because I'm lazy. So I'm currently situated on the floor on a beanbag. And I did warn you that if you hear anything weird, it's because the beanbag doesn't have beans in it. It's full of soft toys that have belonged to my 3 children as they grew up. And occasionally they make noise. If I move my leg around, you might hear a cow moo or a truck go off or something. So I'm trying to make it happen, but if something happens weird, it's not a fart. It's probably a giraffe or something.
I love that so much. Just so
yeah,
much.
Bear with me if you hear any animal noises. I'm not getting up to anything weird. Certainly nothing sexual. At least not yet. It's just a soft toy.
That's pretty ingenious, though, in terms of space saver. It's like, we can have a beanbag or we can have a pile of toys. You know what? Let's combine them, and then it can just be both.
Yeah.
As long as some of Mummy's and Daddy's toys aren't in there, you're fine. That's not going to get too uncomfortable.
You'll know about it. If I cry out in pain, I've sat on a mummy and daddy toy. It'll also surprise me because I didn't know that we had mummy and daddy toys in this house. So it'll also be a big eye opener. Or it'll be something opener.
Let's move on. Hiding right in plain sight.
You don't want to know where it's going to hide, mate, if I sit on it, okay? That's all. We are back in the, where are we? The Milky Way galaxy. We're talking sacrifices, or as you said last week, Matty, when you teased it, my big Jaffa wedding. Or big fat Jaffa.
Big fat Jaffa wedding, yeah.
That's
and
it.
It's a shame
Here
the
we
Gibson
are.
brothers aren't here, because I've been talking about this for a couple of seasons. I think a couple of seasons ago I mentioned the big fat Jaffa wedding.
And I had forgotten, I think because you spoke about it, when you said that, it was a really positive sort of tone. You know, my big fat Jaffa wedding, it sounds fun, right? We asked Albin out there to make up a nice video, CGI some faces. We asked for Albin to do all the work for us because it sounded fun. And then I realised that this wasn't about Teal'c or Ishtar or anyone else. It was about Ryak. And I'm like, ooh, why did Matty sound so positive when it's about Ryak? I mean, obviously he loves Ryak. But, look, let's get into the synopsis first. We're going to do what we do each and every week. If you are joining us for the first time, we read the synopsis, what the episode's about, off the back of a DVD, no less, and then we'll get into the episode and see what we thought. During a meeting with Ishtar's rebel Jafar faction on the planet Haktil, Teal'c receives some distressing news. His son Ryak intends to marry one of Ishtar's warriors. Refusing to give his blessing to the marriage puts Teal'c at odds with Ishtar, even as they are ambushed by enemy forces. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. There was a lot of Jafar words there. Hang on. So Ishtar, Jafar, Haktil, and Teal'c were all in the first line that I read there, and there's a lot of apostrophes going on. I didn't think I was going to make it, Matty. I did, and then we went off to Ryak as well, so it's all happening.
Yeah, lucky they didn't also throw in whatever the Jaffa word for wedding is.
Oh, I didn't write that. I've got everything else down here. Not so much in case you quizzed me at the end of the episode, but more so just because I wanted to remember there was Simka, which I guess is fiance.
Yeah.
Because Ryak referred to his Simka Karin, and I'm like, did you just call her Karen? Is she a Karen?
Just called her Karen and put an apostrophe in there, and that's fine.
his Simba Karen, and then the Jafar word for honeymoon, Shimroa.
Yeah, like, the first Eva Shimroa.
Oh God, you're the first day. You know what I'm talking about. I actually didn't catch the one about the wedding. Have you got that? Are you
No,
familiar?
I don't.
I mean, we got it twice. We got two weddings in here, but I think for me, the first thing that I did want to point out wasn't actually anything to do with the wedding. It was, as we mentioned last week, we like to do weekly podcasts, but for some reason during this time of isolation where we should be pumping out more content a little bit easier because we are at home, we don't have to get to the studio, we all coming from different spots in our same city, but we are traveling from different places to get in. So sometimes it's a bit difficult for us to get in week to week and record a podcast. But you'd think, hey, we're recording from home. This is going to be so much easier. It's been a lot more difficult somehow. We're all a lot busier with work. Somehow our each individual works haven't stopped. If anything, we are somehow doing more stuff. So we have, been doing an episode every week and a half on average rather than every week. So it's been a couple of weeks since we watched any SG-1. We were in the Atlantis galaxy last week, so I've been focused on that and the Wraith and whatever was going on with those guys in the underworld. And the opening words of this episode was Daniel saying, hey, Braytak and Teal'c, what they think, how to take down all of the system lords. And I'm like, oh, we're back. We're back in Stargate. We're talking about Braytak. We're talking about the Jafar. We're talking about taking down system lords. Like, this is the shit. We're 7.5 seasons into SG-1 and we are talking about like some real hardcore Stargate shit. And while the entire episode as a whole didn't really focus on the big picture, really, it was enough to just drag us back into, those sort of one-off episodes of Stargate where we aren't really focused on the war at large. We're putting that aside for a second. We're talking about the real deal, even if it is focused on a guy called Moloch, who I haven't really talked about a lot, in the grand scheme of things. This is Stargate SG-1. We're back, baby.
Yeah, I mean, friggin' Michael Shanks, Daniel Jackson, like MVP for this episode, just in that opening credit, like the opening sequence. Holy crap, was he talking fast and giving so much exposition. Like, just rattling off basically the last 7.5 seasons of what's been going on in about 90 seconds.
Which normally I would hate, I think, if not for the fact that it was all part of the joke based on the situation. It was all one shot, and the fact that Jack, who is this now, he's the Brigadier General of the base, but he was like, oh my God, this is so boring. Do I have to listen to this guy the whole time? So I didn't mind the exposition, which normally I would. It sort of makes me sick a little bit when they just look at you down the camera and tell you what's going on. But that just works so well. And
they even introduces the new term for the Jaffa resistance being the fifth column.
Yeah, that's cool. I don't know how it's relevant or makes sense, but I like it.
Something to do. I had to look it up. It's a reference to the Spanish Civil War, I think, was where the term was first coined. So I think cool. in the same way, like a resistance, a marquee, and all those kind of words that we use, the fifth column is just another one of those references.
I like it.
And the fact that Jack just doesn't even question it, he just blinks straight through it.
Order the deaths of all female Jaffa born in his domain, and her underground railroad to Hocktail can't save them all. Even now, she's organizing a rebellion to overthrow Moloch. Now, Tick and Braytak are trying to convince her to see the bigger picture.
What was my question again?
How's it going?
It seemed so innocuous at the time.
Fellas!
Yeah, I can believe that. You two, like this, we're back with old characters, and it just fit them so well, and just fit the actors, and we do have those episodes, and this was still one of them. By no means was it an episode where we had a lot of access to Richard Dean Anderson, but you have those moments between two characters and between two actors that have worked together for 7-8 years, and you sort of forget about the fact that you don't see Richard Dean Anderson for 80% of the episode, 85% of the episode, because that is him, that is Daniel Jackson, that's those two working together. It just feels so natural and so regular, so normal, that you kind of forget about the fact that Jack isn't in this episode. He isn't in the last episode. He's not going to be in next week too much. I mean, I'm generalizing there. I don't know what next week is, but I like those moments. We haven't lost that even after all this time, even after losing the actor on set a lot in RDA, that we still get to have those moments between him and Shanksy, and Shanksy doing his Shanksy thing.
And it didn't feel too much like Jack wasn't there. I think he was just sprinkled in enough that it still felt like a normal SG-1 episode.
Yeah.
Although, do you know who they did have as a little extra? And this throws back to a couple of weeks ago when we were talking Affinity with the whole love fest with Lois Lane and all that stuff going on. Is the other Jafar, when they go to the meeting and you meet the other Jafar that Teal'c's a little bit cautious of, Aaron.
Aaron.
That's Jeff Judge. That's Chris Judge's brother.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Now I want to rewatch the episode.
Yeah, so he's the one that I was talking about a couple of weeks ago. He's married to Lois Lane's sister.
Oh, man, I didn't give the episode enough respect or obviously attention for me to even look at him and go, are these two related? Like, that's cool. And obviously, he wrote this episode. We haven't mentioned that yet, but yeah, Christopher Judge wrote this episode, which is really cool. And like, you've been saying and Brennan's been saying throughout season 8 that there's a lot of Teal'c stuff. It's really Teal'c heavy in season 8, which is good as far as the Jafar storyline goes, is that, you think this shit really starts to be building up. We've been talking about the fact that Jafar want to fight off and fight back and all that sort of stuff, that you want to see some progress be made this time. And obviously we've been introduced to the female Jafar faction, a little while ago, but to see them brought back in, you hear all the backstory about what they've been doing between the episodes. But that, the big thing, I guess, outside of the show, that Chris Judge has really taken on ownership of not only Teal'c. It's one thing to take ownership on the character that you play, but to actually take on ownership of the character and what he means in the grand scheme of the entire mythology, and branching out and what other stories revolve around him or revolve around the other people that he has affected in the past. Like, obviously we came across the female group of Jafar warriors however long ago that was, last season, right?
Yeah.
And then since then, they haven't just stood around waiting for us to come back. They've been off fighting their fight. They've been forming these other little alliances to fight off Moloch and all that. And then Teal'c comes back and goes, no, this needs to be a bigger thing. It needs to be about all the system lords. And they're like, no, we need to fight off the one that's been oppressing us. So they've been off doing their own thing. So it's like it's the influence of Teal'c, down several different levels. And that Chris Judge goes, no, I can write that. It's not like you need a Deloise or a Martin Wood or a Brad Wright or something like that to come in, or even a Cover to come in and go, you know what, we've been around for a long time. We understand not only the characters and the stories, but the mythology as a whole. The Chris Judge goes, no, I'll take that on. And he has written an episode, which I don't know how you felt about it. We haven't spoken about it even after 15 minutes, but I like this episode.
Yeah, obviously the the wedding, I can see that'd be polarized for people, that you can give it or take it, because sometimes people like Ryak, sometimes people don't, which is I understand all that. But the other stuff is good. I feel like, and that's something that, as you were saying, having other writers come in, they kind of seem to have forgotten about the Jafar resistance. I feel like every time Chris Judge writes an episode, it's something big for the Jafar resistance. Like the first episode that Chris got a writing credit for, or story credit for, was The Warrior, with remember Imhotep impersonating a Jafar, when it was actually Gua'uld, so
yeah.
It kind of touched base with them again. Then obviously there was the Changeling, where he finally got onto Tritonin, and there was the big massacre of all the Jafar. And then he wrote Birthright, which was when we were first introduced to Ishtar, and the female Jaffa resistance, and then this episode as well. So it's all these big things. I think that's probably, if you think about it, that's what, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's one episode a season for the last 4 seasons, and they're probably the biggest sort of touchstones for finding out what the Jafar resistance is up to and what they're doing and where they're progressing. So I feel like if it weren't for Chris doing that, we probably wouldn't have a lot of this stuff, because I feel like it's an important part. It was Teal'c's, main reason for joining the SGC back in season 1, and it kind of fell by the wayside a lot. So I think we really needed him to step it up on behalf of the Jaffa.
Yeah, and they touched on that a lot, I guess. When you had that scene between Braytak and Ryak, and Ryak even mentioning the false belief, him saying, he left us because we made him weak, and Braytak saying, that's not true. He goes, no, it's okay. I've forgiven him for that. It's like, well, you forgive him for something that wasn't the case, and we know that as viewers, but at the same time we can understand him. Like Ryak or not, we understand why he would believe that, because I guess so many people around him would have told him that, or that's his interpretation as a child. Maybe that's what his mother told him.
Well, it was very weird
at a moment of
too,
weakness.
in that Teal'c had that line where he said, "Love weakens resolve."
Yeah,
And I feel like him saying that felt really weird, because the whole reason Teal'c sort of left his home was to protect his family and to do this for them because he loved them so much.
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
So I feel like love gave him more resolve, not less. So I found that a really interesting line for Teal'c to say. Like, I like the fact that Ryak misinterpreted it, and Braytak had to kind of, be like, "Nah, mate, it's not the way it happened." But the fact that Teal'c said love weakens resolve, I was like, oh, I don't know if I feel that way.
And I like that, like Braytek, he was a great middleman between so many different people. Like, he was MVP almost for the episode, because he did so much work between so many different characters, whether it was Jack and the whole rebellion, or it was Ryak and Teal'c, or it was Teal'c and Ishtar, or whatever was going on. But what I like too about the episode was that while we are very much on Teal'c's side, it's Christopher Judge writing about Teal'c and writing for Teal'c, and Teal'c's really pushing his case forward that, hey, this is never going to work until it's going to be, us versus all the Goa'uld. And despite, again, the way the episode ended, where, okay, Moloch dies, spoiler alert, and that Ishtar has to come back to Teal'c at the end of the episode and goes, look, you're right, someone did come up and take his place. Kind of a good thing that it was Baal, because it's like, well, Baal was always going to do it eventually. Whether someone else took his place and Baal killed that person, Baal was going to do it. But at the same time, I like that it wasn't just a clear-cut message throughout the entire episode that, you know what, Teal'c's right. You shouldn't go after this one person, because the reason why they end up getting Moloch in the first place is probably because of Ishtar and the other anti-Moloch Jafar. They were there to get him. They drew him out by going to have these meetings about trying to take him down. He comes around. Teal'c's like, oh, yeah, you're right. There's an opportunity. Let's take him out, sort of thing. That Chris Judge isn't just there to write, Teal'c's right, everybody else is wrong. He's willing to explore. Teal'c is right for the right reasons, but maybe there are other options as why he can do. Like he wants to do what he wants to do for the right reasons. Ishtar wants to do what she wants to do for the right reasons, but it's not just black and white. There is so much grey there. They're all fighting the same cause. They're just fighting it in a different way. So I like that. Yeah, you just didn't favour one character, and that we weren't stuck for 20 or 30 minutes of the episode going, why is the episode telling us that Ishtar's right when we know that she's wrong, and we're just going to get proven that she's wrong by the end of the episode? Like, you didn't sit there thinking one person was right or wrong the entire time at any stage of the episode. I could see everyone's point of view throughout the whole thing. And everyone. I want to say the Ishtar argument and the Teal'c argument. I think if we broke it down to maybe a Ryak and Karin, it's a different story, but we'll get to that later. But I liked that element of it as well, that there's more to the Jafar than what we've learned about them in the first 5 seasons, and it's not just about Teal'c and Braytak. That there is, I don't know, there's so much more to them, so much more personality, so much more drive and life behind them all, and we get that a lot now that we've met the Jafar female faction.
Yeah, although I did find in this episode, I found Ishtar really hard to follow in terms of like her mindset. Like, she took a journey to get offended.
Yes, I know.
Like Teal'c doesn't like the fact that Ryak's getting married. I think it's mainly just because Ryak decided without Teal'c, without seeking out Teal'c's help, without asking an opinion from his father, asking for advice or anything like that.
Yeah, can I tell you, I got engaged 9 years ago, nearly. July 23rd, I will have been engaged 9 years ago. And my brother, dearest Lincoln, still gives me shit for the fact that I didn't tell him that I was doing it beforehand. You'd think he'd get over it. He doesn't, so I can understand Teal'c as a father of all people that would go, hang on, you didn't talk to me about this shit.
Yeah, so really I feel like that's all Teal'c was upset about. But Ishtar's like, oh, okay, so Teal'c's upset about the wedding. He must be upset and think that Karin isn't good enough for Ryak, which means he must think as me, Ishtar, being Karin's teacher and leader, I mustn't be good enough, so I'm going to take offense to it. I'm like, holy crap, did you need a packed lunch and a map to get there? What the hell? And then later on, when she's talking to Corinne, trying to give her, like, advice and not get so upset, she literally says to her, you must not let your emotions take you to such extremes. I'm like, excuse me? And I was kind of expecting the moment where, like, as she says that, you know, she realizes her error in that, you know, she got over what she said earlier so quickly. It's like, when she took the journey to get offended by Teal'c, she yelled at him about it, he yelled back at her, and then in the very next scene, she's calling him like, oh, we all must listen to the mighty Teal'c and heed his advice and heed his word about return, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, she got over that quick.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
she didn't even, like, go through that normal writing trope of, by giving Karin advice later on and applying what she said to Karin to her own situation and realize she was getting too extreme about it from her emotions. So I was like, she was already over it by the time she got there. So it was very odd trying to follow that element of her storyline. So yeah, the wedding stuff, I think the best stuff was the other three. So it was O'Neill, Jackson and Tapping and Carter, like them having their fun stuff. You know, oh God, there's going to be a horse. Oh, you're not slaughtering a goat. All that stuff. That was great. Whereas the other stuff, the lovers quarrel, that classic cliche, oh, you know, you don't respect me, you don't respect me. We're a modern couple, but then we want to be traditional about our wedding ceremony, blah, blah, blah. I was like, that can all go out the window. Whereas Ishtar, like, on the planet, running around with Aaron and Teal'c, I'm like, that's the stuff I'm here to see.
Yeah, it was. I think that was so much more evident come the end of the episode where, you know, first in the first wedding, we had to say, it's going to happen, it's got to happen, it's got to happen. Bang, we're like, you know, barely a third into the episode, and we have the wedding, and it, you know, goes tits up.
Oh, the rehearsal.
Well, essentially the rehearsal, yeah. Or was that actually supposed to be a rehearsal? I just thought that was like whatever it was.
Because at the end of the scene, Braytak goes, and this is why we must rehearse such things.
Oh, see, I thought I actually took that as like, this is why we should rehearse. I can see why you guys do rehearse them. So, either way, like the fact that they have that argument, and you know, then Ishtar talks to and Ryak talks to Braytak, and Ryak, I'm sure at some stage talks to Teal'c pre the other wedding. I can't exactly remember, even though I watched it literally 2 hours ago. But then, you know, we have the big battle at the end, and it's all about Moloch, and it's all about, you know, whether Teal'c's, you know, his drive is more correct than what Ishtar's is. Oh, no, they're both right. Can they coincide? Can they work together? Yada, yada, yada. Bang, we're back in the gate room. We're getting married again. I'm like, hang on. We as an audience never saw Ryak and Karin reconcile. Like,
yeah,
we understood.
Weird.
Yeah, we understood in their own individual scenes that, you know, Karin had sort of been told by Ishtar, well, hang on, maybe you should see things a little bit differently. You know, don't let him push you around, but, you know. And then we saw Ryak go, hang on, you know, she's got to respect me. And then Braytak saying, oh, hang on, you've got to respect her as well. So we got, sure, them as individuals understand from their own point of view, talking to their mentors, I should do things differently. But I still felt like we maybe should have seen them have a conversation, because it kind of just felt like they just, maybe your idea is completely correct, that it was a rehearsal, and that maybe they just reached that day 3 and it was like, oh, okay, we don't want to get married, but I guess we're getting married, and thank God we've already spoken to our mentors and we feel better about this. Because that wedding, even though the opening scene, prologue, pre-credits, was Teal'c being pissed off there was a wedding happening. Immediately post-credits, there's a wedding happening. They're bringing horses. They want goats, like you said. There's a wedding happening. We get the wedding, rehearsal or not. There's a wedding situation happening. There's a ceremony going on. But then come the end of the episode, you see it for real. And I'm like, oh, this just feels really out of place. And it shouldn't, because so much of the episode has been about this. But it actually feels out of place because I feel like we didn't get that extra scene, which in many ways would have been more exposition, because we've already seen the scenes that would have led to that missing scene. But I still feel like you needed that. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but even though it would have been obvious and them getting together, we as an audience can understand that just happened behind the scenes. That happened between other scenes. It doesn't matter. I still feel like we did need that, even for an acting standpoint, for Ryak and Karin. I think we needed that for them to be able to showcase, even for 15 seconds, 30 seconds, let them showcase those two characters reconciling. Because it was a big thing. Like, you know, the Jafar as warriors, it's a very archaic sort of way of living, in the sense of what a man is in that culture and what a woman is in that culture. You know, we kind of learnt that when we first met them. Was it Birthright, you said, where we first met the female Jaffa, that, hang on, sure, all our women are warriors too, but, you know, the men are the real warriors, sure. You know, it's like them go, no, we're doing this for ourselves. We're women, we're standing up for our women rights as women Jafar. So I feel like Ryak and Karin being the next generation, that it would have been good for them to actually work out, well, hang on, I don't want you to kneel before me. I don't think that you're better than me. You know, and hang on, no, I don't. It's not about me wanting to be better than you. I want us to be equals, and I want you to. Why don't you do it for me? I'll kneel for you. You kneel for me. It'll be a great symbol. Because we never saw that in the ceremony. It was just kind of like they got rid of all of that completely, which again is fine. We don't need to see them repeat the old stuff and then clear the new stuff. But it was like, bang, we were in the middle of vows. And I'm like, hang on, so are vows a thing in the Jafar ceremony anyway? Or is this a new thing that is inspired by the way humans do things, instead of the old vows where it's a kneeling situation? Did you both kneel like she suggested earlier? Or did neither of you do it and you're just saying how much you love each other and what each other looks like, and you look like the sun? And like, I don't know. I just feel like we missed a scene to make that wedding feel out of place at the end.
Yeah, and this ceremony was a bit of a letdown. Like, I'll take a that's one for this, but there is an episode of Deep Space Nine where there's a great wedding episode called You Are Cordially Invited. And it's a very similar thing, is, you know, the couple that are going to get married, they suddenly have that, you know, that, oh, is this the way it's going to be? The bride pulls out last minute. But in that situation, again, you don't get that reconcile scene. But what actually happens is it's only the bride who pulls away, really. And then, you know, her best friend comes and consoles them and says, you're being an idiot. You know, what were you expecting to happen? And sort of talks her around, and she realizes that she was like, she'd made an error. And then the next scene is her walking down the aisle. So you do miss that reconciliation, but the wedding itself, because it's a Klingon wedding, is so unbelievably amazing. Just the spectacle of it, that makes up for it. Whereas, like you were saying, we missed the reconciliation scene between Ryak and Karin, and then got a very, very, very basic ceremony.
Yeah.
That just seemed a bit meh. Like, in the gate room, it's like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Again? Come on.
Yeah.
Go outside. Do something.
Yeah, I know. Like, this is a very Australian reference to make for any outside listeners. I apologise, but, you know, I think I've referenced it a bunch of times. And it is to do with the restrictions and the boundaries of a television budget. But it's like, you know, you watch something like a Home and Away or a Neighbours, any of the soaps that we have in Australia, and everyone gets married at the local diner, or everyone gets married at the same park that they go to in every episode. It's like they only have the same 10 friends there, and they all get married at the same place because that's one of the 4 sets we have on this show. And it's like, guys, like you said, go outside, find a different spot.
In Summer Bay, a wedding ceremony is just too damn expensive for the production. So, you know.
Well, you know it's going to burn down at the end because at least 4 people have got to die at a wedding. That's the only thing. You know, like, that's how they celebrate. That's a reception. It's not a reception. It's a funeral. We go from a wedding into a funeral into a wake or something.
Yeah.
Poor old Corinne as well. I feel like, as she wasn't one of the cast, from my memory, of the Birthright episode, you know, she is a new character, and a new actor, that she was kind of underdone as far as how much, we as an audience are meant to respect her as a warrior, because she was kind of just thrown in there, and I feel like that character is a little bit of a... She was just a little bit of a crying bride to be, and I'm not trying to say anything sexist or anything, but she was
I thought she was a little bit bratty. There was a little bit of a bratty vibe. She didn't bring the noble warrior vibe that any of the other actors brought in Birthright, whether it be the adult actors like that trio that were sort of behind Ishtar, in Birthright, or even that young girl, the young girl that had the crush on Daniel. Even she had a bit more of a noble warrior kind of feel to her more than Karin did.
I think I don't mind the opening scene where you meet her, when she first comes through the gate with Ryak, and she's a bit bubbly. She's really looking forward to the wedding. Oh my God, there's so much to do, and we're so excited. Of course we're going to get married. We're always going to get married in 3 days. It doesn't matter where we are. We love each other. Oh, come on, Ryak. We've got so much stuff to do. I don't mind that she is very much like any other character, secondary character, bride-to-be that we might see in any romantic comedy, right? And she's just so keen for the wedding. That's fine. Like, it's actually a nice side to see of a female Jaffa warrior that, hang on, they're hard and they're out there to kill their masters and all that sort of stuff. But you know what? She can also look forward to marrying the love of her life. I like that. That's a nice little bit of character progression side of their personality to show. But then in the wedding where again, fair enough, she's cracking out going, hang on, what do you mean kneel to you? And there's another part of the ceremony that I do want to refer to, but I'll save that for later. But what do you mean kneel to you? I'm kneeling for no man, and that includes my husband. And he's like, well, how dare you disrespect me? And I'm like, oh, bro, read the room. Like, you met her as a female warrior who, they're out there like, it's one for all for one situation of like an all-female. That's Charlie's Angels like 10.0, mate. Like, you're going to stand there in front of all her friends behind her who could kill you with a look going, you're disrespecting me because you're not kneeling in front of me. But then when she's in there and she's complaining to Ishtar, and why would he do this? I'm never marrying him. He's a pig-head of a man, and just like his father. And then the next time we saw her, and she was much the same. And the only time that she wasn't complaining about what was going on was when she was bubbly excited at the start or getting married at the end and leaving. And I just feel like they didn't give her enough other stuff to show off that, hang on, she is just like the rest of them. Now, we're supposed to know that, of course, because she's part of them, so obviously she is just like them. But with Ishtar, we see a softer side, and 10 seconds later, we see a warrior, hardened warrior leader side, back to being a softer side, and she's very emotional. She's in love with Teal'c, but you know what? She will leave Teal'c tomorrow if it means that she can succeed in her mission type thing, right? We don't get any of that from Karin, and I felt for the character. I felt for the actress that you're in that role, and that role as part of that group in the storyline and the mythology, and it's very one-dimensional in many aspects. That's nothing against Christopher Judge, the way that if he wrote it the way that we see it on the screen, or whether it was butchered afterwards and trimmed down or anything, but I just feel like that character, as secondary as what she was, deserves a little bit more.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right. Firstly, I think it did get sort of cut down a bit in that originally this was going to be the first of a 3-part arc.
Oh.
That never eventuated. I think mainly because obviously at the end of season 8 they thought the series ended. Like, that was it.
Yeah.
And then obviously season 9 and 10 it takes a very different course. So I don't think it ever really sort of eventuated. But sort of just while you were talking about that, I was just sort of spitballing and just sort of pitching in my head, and I'm thinking, would it have worked if? And I know it's hard because, it was Chris Judge's brother, but I wonder if Aaron, if that could have been Karin instead. I guess you'd have to get around the fact, like, imagine if, so Ishtar went to that meeting and took Karin with her, because Karin was like her second or whatever. It was like her apprentice and had to come. Obviously, you'd have to write around the fact that it's like, oh, she's supposed to get married in 3 days. But I feel like you could easily write around that and be like, oh, they're warriors. They're warriors first, they will do their duty and then celebrate after. So imagine if instead of Teal'c being skeptical of Aaron, thinking he was the one that sold them out, imagine if he was running around like with just Ishtar and Karin, and then when Ishtar runs off and gets captured, Teal'c has to do all that stuff when thinking he has to protect Karin because she's a little girl and she's betrothed to his son, he has to protect her. But then she actually comes through as the warrior that, she's supposed to be. And she's the one that saves Teal'c towards the end there, like Aaron did.
Yeah, that'd actually be kind of cool. Like, because then you get that bit where Aaron says to him, "What more do I need to do to prove my loyalty?" Like, that would have been a really cool line for Corinne to do. And
yeah.
I guess to really focus on Ryak, back in the base, thinking, hang on, like, I showed some kind of disrespect to my wife-to-be. Now she's out there with my father on a do-or-die mission for the sake of her people, the sake of our entire people. And I'm back here doing nothing. Like, hang on. She deserves so much more respect than what I gave her. Okay, maybe he didn't mean any disrespect the way that he said it. It was just like, well, hey, hang on. This is tradition. Like, you do this, I do what I do, and, well, we just live how we live. But we've got to kind of appreciate the traditions here. But to actually have them out there on a mission together and Ryak still be back on the base because that was his place. That would have actually been really cool. I would have liked to have seen that.
Yeah, and obviously Karin was very critical of Teal'c too. Remember, she was like, "Oh, Ryak's pig-headed just like his father," and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of feel like, it could have been a good bridging thing for Teal'c and Karin. Karin would learn to respect Teal'c, and Teal'c would learn to respect Karin. And then we get that double up of seeing her being the warrior. That, they keep... It's always that thing, they're telling us she's part of the Haktil and she's, she's a warrior, but yeah, she just seems like a giddy bride, and that's all we really get, and a bit bratty.
And in some ways, it's like we initially got what you're suggesting they should have done anyway with the lead up to it, and then the way that it ends where he pulls Ryak aside and says, I can think of no better partner for you than Karin. And it's like, have you met her other than...
Yeah.
Hang on, have you spoken? We have not seen you speak to her yet. It was only after that where he hugged them both and said, live well, be safe. And she's like, okay, father.
Yeah.
And, she come around to him because obviously he came around to her, but also he'd been out there with Ishtar, so she can, feel differently about him despite it not being based on personal experiences. But it's like that ending was written for the fact that they had experienced this mission together. So
yeah, and then that way, while they're going and doing all of that, you could have Ryak back at the base, because I think Ryak, he's very progressive when it comes to the Jaffa and their freedom, all that kind of stuff. Not as progressive as Ishtar's. What does Ishtar call her group again? They're the Haktil. So yeah, Haktil. So what I would have loved is Ryak to realise and really highlight it to the audience as well, is those traditional things that we do because they're tradition and we don't know why. Like, every December, why do we decorate a tree in our house? Why? Well, because we did last year. But why? Where does that come from? When you're in fine dining, why is the knife on the left and the fork on the right? Fork on the left and knife on the right. And why? That's one of my favourite things, is to question those traditions and go, well, why do we do that? Oh, because that's the way we've been taught. Well, you need to think for yourself. So I really would have loved that, as progressive as Ryak is, him then not realising how archaic it is for him to expect his wife to kneel before him at a wedding ceremony. She's going to be the one in the dress, man. It's going to ruin the dress, first of all. And then it was still like, she had the little wreath of flowers in her hair. And I'm like, oh, really? A warrior race going to do that?
Before I knew that the wedding was going to fall apart, I had written that down, and only in hindsight, it's so much more evident. Like, the fact that she blew up when it was, well, now take a kneel before your husband and, pledge yourself to him. And she's like, no. But literally 60 seconds earlier, it was place the circle of fidelity atop Karen's head. And it's like, cool, yep, sweet. You want to be one with each other. You are his and he is yours, and you will only be each other's from now on. You are promising yourself to each other with this circle of fidelity. And what's he get? A totem of bravery. I'm like, hang on, what?
Yeah.
Like,
what?
she never questioned that. And I'm like, as an audience member, I'm like, hang on. So she's got to stay loyal and true to him and pine over him when he's out there and potentially gone for months or years at a time fighting the good fight. What expectations do we have of him? Oh, he's a warrior. As long as he's brave, he can screw as many people as he wants to. It doesn't matter. Like, she's just got to accept that she's got to stay loyal to a bloke, and if he wants to dick someone else, as long as he was brave in battle, it's all good, guys. Don't
Yeah,
even
as long as
worry
he's
about
wearing the symbol of bravery she gave him, it's fine.
That's the thing, is it stuck out so badly for me as an audience member, and then only when she questioned the kneeling did I go, oh, hang on, now that thing before seems so much louder. Like, why were you okay with that? But I guess, maybe in the writing it was like the kneeling that seemed as a symbol just so much worse.
Yeah. Hey, mate, we've said it a lot on this podcast. The line must be drawn here, this far no further.
Is that that's two, or the fact that you're using one of our that's one, that's two, that's three references, it discounts itself. Whew, this is getting
Look, I'll
confusing
leave
now.
that to you in post and see what you want to put in.
I did like in the wedding though when it fell apart, like they did that quick shot to Teal'c and he's just sitting there with one of the biggest smiles I've seen on Christopher Judge's face in this entire show. He was so happy that it fell apart, and then it was immediately followed up by an unscheduled off-world activation, and Walter announces it, and Teal'c is in the same room. He's in the control room. And I almost really just wanted him to walk over and like tap Walter on the shoulder and go, "We don't need it anymore." Like he'd planned that the whole time. Like, because it was like, had they not have walked off in the middle of that ceremony, that off-world activation was going to happen and ruin the wedding anyway. So
Yeah.
I just love the idea that Teal'c had like paid off Walter as just, "Oi, give us a warning." And because that kawoosh is going to come out and disintegrate everybody, they'll all piss off, and this wedding will be off for at least the next hour, and maybe I can, talk Ryak out of it anyway. So it wasn't to be
the
the case,
most
but it would have been nice.
inconvenient spot for like any kind of ceremony.
Yeah, again, it looks sexy. I get it.
Same as when we've had funerals there, when we've put all the stuff up, and Carter's promotion being held on the gate room ramp. It's all very inconvenient.
Yeah. Look, another thing. It's probably petty, and whether it was Chris Judge's scripting, someone else doing a little bit of doctoring on it, but when Teal'c busted in at the end to say,
I know what you're going to say here. Give it to me. I've got it written down. Give it to me.
zatting.
Yep. He says, "Zat us both. You will need to zat us both."
He goes, even zatting us with one shot, she's so weak that it'll kill us both, or something. It'll kill her. And I rewound it. I'm like, no, because I'm watching it on Good People on Stan. I'm watching it on Stan. Got the subtitles on, and I rewound it, and I'm like, I must have misheard it. And he said the word zatting, and I thought,
Yep.
hang on, I feel that should be a human term. The term zat. Like,
That's the
Teal'c
human
for the
term.
longest time. I don't know whether Teal'c ever says zat. I can't remember. But for the longest time, at the very least, he referred to it as a zat nicotel. That's a zat nicotel. That's what that is. Sure, Jack had called a zat or a zat gun, or maybe Carter would even say, throw us a zat. Jackson, I've got a zat. Something. That it's a human thing. It's a zat gun or a zat.
To turn zat into a verb is definitely a human thing, and I feel like it's and it's probably written in the script that way as like a direction. It's like, oh, such and such is at such and such, or such and such is zatted by off screen or whatever. And obviously Chris has written that in and not realised that, shouldn't have been there.
It's just a weird thing, isn't it? I'm glad it stood out for you as well, because I was like, am I getting a little bit petty with this? But it is quite a clear thing that, hang on.
And
man,
it happens a
far.
few more times than this, I'm fairly certain.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if it was season 1, I know if Brendan was here, he'd say, well, that's probably the script supervisor's job to correct that.
Yeah. Oh, we can still blame him. I mean,
definitely.
It's well within our wheelhouse to do that. But yeah, I just felt like that was, in a way, such an obvious thing. Like, I don't think I would have ever noticed it before. It's been 10 years since I watched this episode, but I'm like, oh, I wonder at what stage they noticed it. They noticed that in editing, and it's like, it's actually too late we can't cut to another shot. It looks ugly. We can't overdub that because we can see that he's not saying that. Like, doesn't, or no one does, and it just to them because they're so inside the situation that it just seems normal. They are zatting him. He's about to zat them. That's what we call it. But it's like, hang on, that character wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Like, he's very much in the vocabulary that is a Zat Nicotel gun. And maybe the correct line is, even one shot from a Zat Nicotel will kill her. That's how they would say it. He wouldn't say, even if you Zat Nicotel us once, because the noun isn't the verb. But it just, it really stood out for me. And I was like, oh, that just took a little bit of the tension out of the scene for me, because I don't think, Ish is going to die. But at the same time, I want to see how it plays out from a writing, a story point of view. And then for him to say the word zatting, I'm like, oh, now we're back to watching a TV show with characters and actors. And
and it's not the only time it happens. It happens a few more times in the rest of the series. And also things like where the Jafar say, oh, get to the gate. Or, they just say gate rather than Stargate, things like that. A lot of the vernacular that, I guess they would use on set a lot just kind of bleeds in. And it's not the only other little petty thing I spotted in the episode too. That was the little hiccup for the writing, but just going to show that, not everyone is immune. The director, Andy Makita, he stuffed up a little bit as well. And I think this is the first time I've actually ever noticed it, only because I forget who it was, but someone wrote into us a couple of seasons ago and told us about Chris Judge's tattoo on his finger, like his wedding ring tattoo that he has, which I'd never noticed before. There's like a close-up shot of his closed fist where you can easily see the tattoo. So I'm going to send you the picture right now so you can have a look at it as well. But it's basically when he and Aaron are huddled down sort of on that little bank near the Stargate, and he shows him how the laser pointer works, how to paint the target.
Yes.
He has his closed fist that he opens and then uses the pointer on. You can clearly see the tattoo on his We'll put that up on socials as well, so everyone can take a look at it. But I was like, ooh, and it wasn't even a quick thing too. Like, they hovered on that for a little while. Like,
a little bit of flavour for Teal.
Something I noticed, and they never really hung a lantern on it or anything like that, but something I found quite a bit funny to myself is, when the SGC is talking to Hacktill and they're trying to organise plans, and they're saying to Hacktill, oh, you guys are acting too rash. We have plans that are a little bit slower, and they're like, well, what are they? And like, oh, we can't tell you. We went full Tok'ra on the Hacktill.
Yeah.
Like, we are to Hacktill as what the Tok'ra are to us. Like, I'd never noticed that before. But it was, you basically could have taken that one scene and changed the characters and made one Tok'ra and one human, and you would have noticed the difference. I think that would have been a perfect line for Jack to just be like, oh God, we're the Tok'ra.
Yeah. We mentioned a few weeks ago that I think it might have been me, because I felt like in one or two of the episodes I was starting to feel a little bit sorry for, not so much Richard Dean Anderson. I said that at the time. I didn't necessarily mean him. It was more so for the character Jack, because he was just being used for comic relief. We're getting him for 20% of the episode at max. We need to just use him to add some light to the dialogue, and everyone else can take care of the other stuff. But I feel like it really fits in this episode. One, for just his character as we know him, but also being the new general or brigadier general of the base. The idea that there are just horses coming through the gate, walking around. There's kids playing like games, marbles or dice or something, and whatever the Jafar version of that is, just on the side of like hallways and stuff. Like, there's just shit going on everywhere. And so it played up for him just to throw out one-liners here and there, or, there'd be emotional dramas, and we couldn't possibly stay on our planet. We don't have anywhere else to go, and just the way that he was, oh, I guess you're welcome here. Like, I feel like the minimal amount they used him, and for the sort of the one note that they used him for, I think it was better done here than it's been done in a lot of episodes for RDA.
Yeah.
I think it really fit him well here. I
think his standout line for me was, sit down, you old coot.
Yeah. Like, my favourite moment, I guess, of Jack's, it was really more about Daniel. And I'm going to chuck this up on the socials as well and have a little bit of fun. But you get that line very early on where Ishtar comes in and sort of, pleads her case. Oh, we don't have anywhere else to go, and everyone's just sort of looking around, and Jack's like, yeah, I mean, you can always stay here. And she's like, oh, are you sure? Okay, no worries. Thanks so much for that. Yeah, well, that'll be great. And then it kind of just pans out, and you see a few other characters here and there. And then Daniel has got the biggest smile on his face. And to me, that's just Jackson going, oh man, I'm gonna have so many more alien bitches to screw here. Like this is me to a T. I don't even have to go off world to have sex with an alien. They are coming here. I'm gonna get my numbers up. This is gonna be great. Yeah, so I don't know. I liked it. It was like you said, it was a real mix there of the wedding stuff to the main, much more important storyline going on. But like him or hate him, I guess we got to see different sides of Reich here, and it reminded me, when we're watching him practice, with his stuff, in the little training situation before Braytek showed up. I'm like, we've really watched like this actor grow up. We only see him once a season, really, I think on average.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've watched him grow. Like, he was a kid when he started the show, and 7-8 years later, he is a young man, and we've watched him grow. We've watched his character grow. Like, I don't know how old the character is supposed to be. I don't know how, again, Jaffa's age and how physiology works or anything like that. But we've watched him grow from a boy into, well, we're getting told a man. He's getting married. So that's kind of cool. Even if, they don't really pay off that wedding thing as much as what they might promise they do. So yeah, it was a bit of a mixed bag, but one of the better mixed bag episodes, I think. And even by way of having Ryak in the episode, which usually has us as a team collectively drag it right the hell down.
Well, would you believe Sacrifices, one of the bottom 5 rated episodes of the entire series of Stargate SG-1.
What? All 10 seasons?
All 10 seasons. This is down there, this is down there with Disclosure, First Commandment, Politics.
Piss off.
I mean, Emancipation is still down at number 1.
Number 1, is it really?
Yeah, Emancipation has a rating of 6.1 on IMDb at the moment. And Sacrifices sits at 6.8. And then, Disclosure, 6.7. Politics, 6.2. First Commandment, 6.7.
I mean, I would have thought, at the very least, from that 5 or 10 second bit towards the end alone, would have nudged it way higher for people. And this is when I really, really want for this episode. Brendan for his 10 hards moment, but Reese for his undying love of Teal'c. When I didn't realize what was going on until it was already happening. When Teal'c's running through to go and rescue Ishtar, and he's shooting, Jafar all over the place. I'm like, how is he doing this? He's carrying 2 f***ing staff weapons and using them in opposite directions at the same time.
That he's zip-tied together. He pulled a couple of zip ties out of his vest, and he zip-tied them together. Boom, 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 boom.
Those guys didn't know what had hit him, and it's like, you know what? He could have done it with one. But it's too much hard work just spinning that thing around. I'd just rather tilt them a little bit. And then he gets it's like Neo in the Matrix. Like, you think back that start of the climax of the Matrix, and they get to the lobby, and they go through all those guns, more guns than he ever needed to. Like, he'd fire 3 bullets, get rid of a gun. I could never understand that. I still don't understand it 21 years on. But they get to the end of the lobby, and he's utilized every gun that he carried in with him. And I'm like, you've just killed the 8 least important people that you're going to fight. What are you going to do when you get upstairs, right? You've got nothing left going on. Teal'c, he shot 10, 15 Jaffa along the way. He gets outside the tent and throws down both staff weapons as if to say, I'm not going to need these. Now, obviously, he's going into a rescue situation. If he's going to shoot anything, it will be a Zatnikatel in case he hits Ishtar. But the idea that he just nah, don't need this anymore. And I'm like, that's the greatest weapon you've ever carried.
Yeah.
What are you doing? So I think that alone for this team would have bumped it way higher than what it is. So I don't think it'll... I mean, I haven't seen the rest of the season, but I don't even think it'll be in my bottom 5 for this season.
Mate, this is rated 5 points higher, 5 points lower than Icon.
Oh.
That's a 7.2. This is a 6.8.
I mean, I don't get it, but
No, I don't get it either. Like, it's okay. It's not an episode that I very often will go, oh, I need to see Riot get married. I'm going to pop that disc in and watch that episode. But, you know, I could definitely see someone going, oh, I want to see Teal'c with the, you know, double-ended staff weapon.
oh, you could have stopped at double-ended, couldn't you? I heard you. I heard it in your voice.
I really wish he'd actually made that like a recurring weapon. Like, remember for a while in like season 4 or 5, he was carrying around like the big giant cannon from the side of a glider.
Yes.
Like, he had the strap over his shoulder, and then like, you know, season 4, he had his little chin strap, you know, blonde caterpillar thing. Like, I wish that, like, yeah, he'd held onto that and refined it a little. Maybe actually done, like, a full sawn-off version and, like, combined two or something. I think that could have been fun.
Just Darth Maul, eat your heart out. All right, that's episode 168 of Get Into Gate, with seemingly one of the 5 worst Stargate episodes of the entire series, Sacrifices. Though neither of us might agree with that. That is the case. Go on to IMDb and, hey, Logic, just give it a thumbs up. You know, like, even if you don't like it probably doesn't deserve to be in the bottom 5. Just go on there and give it a rate, guys. Come on. That's episode 9.
And hey, you know, you got away with it last week. I got away with it this week. No trivia.
Yes.
How great is that?
We will be back next week to go back to the Pegasus Galaxy. I'm going to ask you a question without notice, Maddie. Do you know what the episode's called next week for Stargate Atlantis?
The episode next week is called Home.
Now, I'm also looking forward to that week after that, because we can just have some fun with some, you know, movie stingers and little scores, little quotes here and there. Because this is really made for you and I and everyone that says that we like to throw in a few Marvel references here and there and get it a cake. Oh, as if that ever happens. It's called Endgame in 2 weeks. We're talking at Endgame. The next episode of Stargate SG-1, it's called Endgame. Okay, am I going to say it again? Of course I am. Endgame.
It's the second best episode of TV science fiction called Endgame.
So we're going to be talking about that in 2 weeks. Next week with Atlantis, we are talking about Home. Until then, you can check out all of our old podcasts on your favourite podcasting outlet. Just search Get Into Gate, a Stargate podcast. Hit us up on the socials, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, especially to see those 2 images. Daniel looking like he wants to screw every female Jaffa in the base, and also Teal'c's, or rather Christopher Judge's, wedding tattoo on his finger that didn't get covered up. And Maddie, the super spy, spotted that. So head to our socials to see those images, or just drop us a long form line, getintogate@gmail.com.
Don't forget to check out our Discord, which Brendan's normally on the Discord. I checked it out a couple of weeks ago and had a little bit of a play on there. It's a bit of fun, so you should definitely check out the Discord.
Can we add that to Brendan's business card? Can he be Brendan Gibson, co-founder of Get Into Gate and Discord correspondent?
Oh, I was going to say facilitator, but I like correspondent. That's
he can
good.
do. We can make him both. Facilitate. I'm going to stop now. Go on with what you were saying.
And if you don't want to make any sacrifices, jump on our Patreon.
Yes. So I like it. I just remembered you from last week saying, God, this is tough work, thinking of a new way to segue into it. So I like it.
So check it out. We have reached our 100 patrons. So once sort of we're all back at full strength, I don't know whether it'll be once we're out of ISO and back in the studio, or I'm not sure what, but we've our goal was to start video podcasting as well. So if you jump onto Patreon, you'll get access to our video podcast when we start doing that, which should be soon, hopefully.
All right, Matty. I am Mitch_Lewis on Twitter and Instagram. Where are you at?
I'm at High Pitched Maddie, and I have to say, people have been slipping into my DMs lately, and I'm loving it.
Back into the DMs, just nice slide, nice and smooth like.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're not doing a mailbag or anything like that, but I did want to give a shout out to Jacob Boers, who's been sending me a few little DMs, and he asked me a question that legitimately I've never ever heard before regarding to Stargate, and as loose as we get in this podcast, we've never really addressed it either.
Yeah.
But he says, could a Tok'ra symbiote fall in romantic love with its host? If so, how would that work? And then, would sex be considered sex or masturbation?
Oh, geez, that is a fine line. You'd really need the You really need the Tok'ra Council to answer that one.
Yeah, and I mean, he did point out that, we saw Jacob deep throat Selmac, so, it could be a thing.
I mean, I think we know how it would work. It's, what the terminology is one thing. And I want to say that it probably would be possible. I want to say it's possible.
If they're two separate entities, then they should be able to, and it's supposed to be a blending, it's a very deep connection.
Yeah, and I guess if it is a truly symbiotic relationship, then they would become one with another. So, as much as you can't fall in love with yourself or I can't fall in love with myself, beyond what we're capable of, Muddy. I don't know. Maybe it isn't possible because you become so much a part of the other person and understand who they are on like a deeper level than anyone will ever otherwise be able to understand. I still want to say it is kind of possible because we have seen in many instances a symbiote fall in love with another human host, with regard to Jolinar and what was his old name, the big teeth guy,
Martooth.
That they had that going on too, where they were very much in love on different levels. So
and we looked at old mate from season 4. Remember the wannabe 7 of 9 was it Freya and Anise, and like Anise had a thing for Jack, but Freya had a thing for Daniel, or vice versa. Well, he did also posit that you're not a true Stargate fan until you've whacked it to a Wraith Queen. So, that's the kind of things that I'm getting in my DMs, which I'm here for. I'm loving it.
I can proudly say so far that I am not a true Stargate fan, if that's the case. But hey,
yeah,
we've
me
got
neither.
plenty of seasons to go.
Maybe you will be by the end of the series. But yeah, up until this point, I mean, I guess I'm not a true fan of Stargate either.
All right, we'll be back next week. Hopefully off the beanbag, Matty, because I've actually just found a soft spot. Would you like to hear it?
Oh, mate, I'd love to see a soft spot in your beanbag.
Oh, Jesus, I really walked into that one. But
yeah.
Look, we've been here for over an hour and I haven't been able to, make my beanbag squeak with all those soft toys. But unfortunately, I just moved and I thought it might have cut through. And now I'm going to make sure it cuts through. Yes, it does. Let's move on. But look, this is what we could have been, having to experience throughout the whole podcast. That's going on right under my left foot, so I'm glad we avoided that throughout the podcast. I'm going to be much more professional next week. That's a lie, but I won't be sitting where I'm sitting. So, Matty, same time next week, buddy. We'll see you then.
Sure.
You done messed up, Aaron!
Get into geek.